Welcome to the Ruddle Show. I'm Lizette, and this is my dad, Cliff Ruddle. And this is our first show, and we're really excited about it. We thought, what better way to start our first show than to start off with an interview I'm going to interview my dad, and we'll get to that momentarily. But first, why don't you tell us a little bit why you even want to do the Ruddle Show?
I'm really excited to do the Ruddle Show for many, many reasons. In no particular order, I want to work even closer with my family, and at 72 years old, this could be Ruddle's final run. So we could be building a family legacy, because right here I have my oldest daughter. We stole her from Cal Berkeley. You know, she's a PhD type person. My daughter Lori, dual in finance, we stole her from Pete Marwick. And my wife of 52 years, she's central to all these moving pieces, and my grandson's the shooter, okay? So what a chance to be able to be with my family and create educational content. It dawned on me last year when Phyllis and I were tallying up the lecture miles over many, many years that we hit 5 million. My face looks like I wore out 2 bodies, okay? So, to have a chance to reach out and stay connected and massively increase my connectivity around the world with my friends that I've met over the decades, the Ruddle Show certainly seems like a really nice way to do that. And of course, the Ruddle Show not only needs to bring you a lot of fun and education, but it's a chance for us to all learn together.
Well, let's talk a little bit about our philosophy behind the Ruddle Show. So the symbol for our show is this rotating tetrahedron, or you can just call it a triangular pyramid with 4 faces. And these 4 words we have over here, education, innovation, community, and lifestyle, are the 4 aspects of the Ruddle Show. And they're pretty much like the parts of a clinician's journey in life. We think they're the 4 crucial parts of a clinician's journey, but they're also like the 4 parts of any person's life. So let's first talk a little bit about education. How do you see that on the Ruddle Show?
Well, education is, at the end of the day, it's to improve performance. So we educate, and by education, not just psychobabble and one way, it should be learning, co-learning together. So we want to improve our performance, and that means we can improve the level of care we provide our patients. As we learn, we have other opportunities with other colleagues, and so those opportunities become possibilities. So education is a really wonderful thing to have, and G.V. Black said it the best. He's the father of North American dentistry. He said no professional has any right other than to be a continuous student for life.
Well, that's great. Yeah, we can always learn. Also, community is one of the aspects of our show, and it's really important for clinicians to get out in the community and see what others are doing. And I don't just mean your community, your little town that you live in. I mean like the international community, because they're doing things differently all over the world, and it's really interesting, and we can learn a lot. It also means getting out in the community to be of service to others, because that also enriches our lives. So humans are not solitary human beings. We need to get out and interact with others, see what others are doing, and communicate our ideas.
Awesome. Well, if you were to look at another face on this tetrahedron, you would notice that there is innovation. Innovation can be easily interpreted to be maybe a new invention. I'm not really talking about that kind of innovation. I'm talking about the kind of innovation where we challenge ourselves. We understand best and uniquely best where our deficiencies lie. So we train up. As we train up, sometimes we have to give up hard fought for proficiencies to get to the next level. So then there's periods of awkwardness, and maybe we feel clumsy and we have a little self-doubt. But the effort to be more than we are drives us closer to be all we can be.
Yeah, I think important with that, the innovation part of our show is we really want to emphasize creativity and maybe thinking in a different way that you're not used to, breaking down paradigms, that kind of thing.
Awesome.
And then last we have lifestyle, and that's because it's not just all about work, 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 because human beings are a lot more than just their productivity. It's also important to have fun, to laugh, to get out of the workplace, and definitely we want you to see what Cliff Ruddle does to inspire himself, like outside of the office as well.
Okay, so basically what the show's supposed to bring to you each time, every time, all the time is a high level of education. Some of it will be considered quite basic, but remember, it's the fundamentals that win it. It's not the magic machine. It's not the Ruby Goldberg machine that can come up for deficiencies and overcome our deficiencies with technology. Technology is an adjunct. So we want to make sure you have education, fun, and you learn a lot. But I want you to laugh a little bit. Find that $1 million smile. Exhibit it. You'll make people around you smile. And as you're smiling, you're inspired. And all of a sudden, there's something good happening here. We don't even know what's going on, but we want to be part of it. So we want to inspire you to have a lot of fun. And the smiling and the laughing, be sure to laugh at yourself. Life is not that serious. So when you laugh a little bit and you inspire others, all this goes together like a big cocktail and it becomes the new you.
So that's kind of just the whole idea behind our show. And now we're going to take that energy that we just saw here and start our interview. So today I'm going to interview my dad, Cliff Ruddle. And I have to say that when I first suggested that I thought it might be a good idea to have our first show be an interview where I interview him, and he wasn't totally excited about that because he's actually very humble. And he said, no one wants to hear about Ruddle's life. And I said, well, absolutely they want to hear about Ruddle's life. So let's get started with the interview. What made you decide to go into dentistry? Was it something that you had wanted to do since you were a child?
Not really. Always wanted to play pro sports, but let's go to the 60s. I was at Cal Berkeley and I was taking a P-Chem major, physical chemistry, and guys that were twice as smart as me were pumping gas. And that had to do with the economy, and it had to do with oil shortages and standing in lines to gas your car up. So I decided to talk to my, Carl, your uncle, but my son-in-law. Anyway, brother-in-law. I'm getting this straight, aren't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Carl Rosick is a dentist, and he was a young dentist at that time. And he said, well, why don't you apply to dental school? And if you get in, you have a decision to make, and if you don't get in, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So what got me interested is my brother-in-law, Carl Rosick, and he's a dentist, and he's retired.
Okay, so actually let's talk a little bit about your family growing up. What was your life like growing up with your family?
Oh, I had a really cool life growing up. Lots of moving. I didn't like that part, but I got to meet a lot of people because of the moving. My pop was a minister, and so we lived in many, many states in the Northwest, Montana, Idaho, Washington, California. So we were moving about every 2 or 3 years. So growing up, we went to many different states, saw different lifestyles and how people lived in cities like Seattle, lived in more rural towns like Bozeman, Montana. So it was a really good life filled with a lot of sports.
Okay, so I've heard sports mentioned a couple times now, that you wanted to be a professional athlete and that your childhood was filled with sports. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about how you envisioned your dream career?
Well, I played a lot of baseball growing up, a lot of Little League, Babe Ruth League, Legion. I was always playing with kids about 3 or 4 years older than me. I had pretty good skill at that time. They're a little eroded today. But anyway, I had visions of playing center field. So I was on the city all-star team, the state all-star team, and we went to a 5-state playoff, and I just thought that would continue on.
I think that even though you went into dentistry, I think sports has always stayed really important in your life, because I remember even as a kid, you taking me and Lori out and playing basketball with us, teaching us how to throw a frisbee, just even getting together neighbors and friends and playing baseball. So yeah, we had sports in our childhood too, and it was all coming from you.
Yeah, it was fun.
Okay, so the next question I have is, where did you meet Mom and when did you guys get married?
Well, I met Phyllis in high school as a junior, and we got married in 1967, so I met her a little earlier than that. And she was a great find, but she always says she found me. I was so busy dribbling the basketball and making plays, I didn't see that play.
I think mom worked too while you went to school, right? She became a computer programmer.
Well, Phyllis was actually the brains in the family. Uh, if you think of being a woman in the Bay Area, in San Francisco in the 60s, Phyllis was working as a computer programmer, programming as it was in that era, punch cards and all that stuff, and computers as big as a room. So it's all different now. We have a handheld. But Phyllis worked in several places in the city, and actually put our family, made it possible for our family to survive.
Because you were in school at that time.
Yeah, I was working on construction for many years, and I was also going to school. So Phyllis was working during my years in construction in Oakland, and also during the dental school period. Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about those dental school years?
Well, I went to the University of Pacific in San Francisco. At that time, it was on Webster Street campus, and I loved dental school. I was one of the nerds. When I went to dental school, they seated us alphabetical, and so I was down the R's. And it seems like everybody around me, their dad or their mother was a dentist. They were in the dentistry field. And so I'll never forget when we checked in on day one, there was a box bigger than this chair. And this guy stood with a microphone. He said, "Take the black box handpiece and put it in drawer 3. Well, I didn't even know what a handpiece was. And all these other guys are going, "Oh, look at the impression material. Look at the clamps." Look. So anyway, it was interesting. I was insecure immediately because I thought I'm way behind. But it was a really great period. UOP was like family. And everybody in the world, I think, knows Art Degoni. He was our hero dean. He was one of the deans. And Art Degoni is known around the world. He was the ADA president. And we all loved Art. And I think I would say about the school, they really treated us with huge respect. We had wonderful teachers, so they made it fun.
So you go to dental school and you get a degree so you can practice, I guess, general dentistry at that point, but then you decide to be an endodontist. So why did you want to be an endodontist?
Well, out of all the disciplines at UOP that I was learning, without reciting them, I was failing endodontics. So, fear is the mother of excellence. So it wasn't just me, but our whole class basically failed. In fact, the first class I took, there was 100 questions. The top score in the class was 20. And this was in endodontics. I think I had a 15 or a 14. And anything that I used to struggle at, that was something to really work on. And as I started to work on it, it was really fun. And it was kind of a mysterious black box stuff, because everything in all the disciplines you visualized and you looked directly and you saw. In endodontics, we cut an access and then we disappeared into a hole. And we couldn't see our files moving through multiplanar curvature into length. We didn't even know what we were doing. But at that time, it was a lot of fun not knowing what we were doing.
So then I guess you applied to Harvard and got in. So what made you choose Harvard?
Okay, so I really became passionate my last year in dental school, my senior year, and I decided to think there's a lot more here. And I really upset the Department of Prosthetics. His name was Herb Ward. Chairman of the department, Ward, always saw me as going to pros school, prosthodontics. And I did get the Pros Award of the Year, so he saw me already penciled in. And when he heard I was going to endo, he said, "Well, any monkey can do this all day long." He said, "Why would you waste your God-given talents doing endo? Anybody can do it." But I loved endo a lot more than I liked pros. And I liked it because you have control of a case up to the restorative part. In pros, you're doing removable, fixed, single crowns, splint dentistry, and there's a lot of responsibility with labs and allied professionals. So it just seemed like I had a lot of control here. I applied to 2 schools in Philadelphia, Temple and Penn, University of Penn, and Harvard and BU, Boston University, the Goldman School of Graduate Dentistry. I chose Harvard. It was a pretty easy decision. I got into all of them, but I liked Harvard because it was family. And Al Krakow was like my second pop. He was a reincarnation of my own dad. And all the things I didn't like about my dad, Al was perfect. And all the things I didn't like about Al, Dad was perfect. So I had 2 fathers in my life. And another reason, I didn't know what I didn't know back then, but I had always been told go to Boston, somewhere in Boston. Well, not Tufts, but go to BU or Harvard because you'll learn warm gutta percha. And if you think about the 70s and where dentistry was in that era, people weren't filling root canal systems. When I went to Boston, they were treating systems. That was completely different from the West Coast treating canals. So Al Krakow was Herb Schilder's second student. Herb Schilder was the father of modern warm gutta percha.
And he was at BU?
He was at BU. And everybody knows Herb Schilder internationally that's even remotely attached to endodontics. He's written some wonderful chapters in Dental Clinics of North America and stuff. But anyway, I thought I got the best of both worlds. I got the Schilder philosophy at Harvard, and then I got a wonderful father figure who was really inspiring. And could Al tell stories? Oh, he was a great storyteller.
So you actually had a good relationship with both Al Krakow and Herb Schilder?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
They were two of the people I most look up to in clinical endodontics.
So how is it that you decided to start practicing in Santa Barbara? Did you always know that you wanted to live in California?
Well, we had been in California when I was in dental school in San Francisco Bay Area, so we always figured we'd come home, and home meant to me back to the Bay Area. But the Bay Area had changed quite a bit just the 2 years that I'd been at Harvard, and so we saw some advertisement for an endodontist wanted in Santa Barbara. I had never been to Santa Barbara, so all the years I'd lived in California, most of our time was in the Tahoe area or the North Beach areas, north of Stinson Beach, Bolinas, and up through there. But we'd never really hung out in Southern California. So there was this ad, Phyllis followed up on it, and it was a group of multidisciplinary dentists, about 17 or 18. They had an oral surgeon, pedodontist, periodontist, orthodontist. They were all represented except they didn't have endo. So there seemed like there was an opening. They wanted me, and I came.
Oh, so you actually started in that practice?
I came to the group practice.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean, that building. Okay, never mind. Sorry.
No, it's good. It's called Patterson Professional Plaza, and it was a group of dentists that had individual practices all over the city, and they didn't like their landlords, they didn't like their buildings, they didn't like parking and all that, so these guys decided to build a complex, and it was called the Patterson Professional. When I came there, it was just framed, and everybody had their suite chosen. There was 3 left, and I chose the one of those 3, and 2 of them were downstairs and 1 was upstairs, and this old guy said, "Cliff, take the high ground." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because in dentistry, you have a lot of lines and stuff can break, and you want to be above the water."
So then, what got you into lecturing and teaching? Because you are known to be an excellent speaker and lecturer around the world. So what made you start taking that path?
It was forced upon me. I was a practitioner. I was doing 10-hour days week after week, year after year, and I was filling a lot of root canal systems. And back in this day, we need to tell our audience, we probably should set this up. If you look at the early 70s, I was the 3rd or 4th guy in the state of California that did warm gutta percha. So most were doing lateral condensation as it was taught all over the country. When you do warm gutta percha and you develop hydraulics in well-shaped canals that have been cleaned, you fill root canal systems. So I was filling root canal systems. Well, a lot of the dentists wouldn't restore the tooth that I had just treated because they said, you have a puff. So Schilder coined the word, the sealer puff. The puff ensures the seal. So when dentists saw filling material beyond the confines of the root, they thought it was an overfill, and that was deemed inappropriate, and overfills were known in that era, to contribute to longitudinal failures. So my friends pulled me aside and said, you need to tell them what you're doing. Well, I passed on telling the world what I was doing for several years, and finally my friend Earl Ness at that time, he said, "Look, Cliff, you have a lot to give. We want to know what you're doing. I want to start the study club. You run it, Cliff, but I'll get together 20 guys. I'll tell you when we meet. Will you give us a day? Once a month." So I finally said, after several years of prompting, I'll be happy to start coming in with my slides and showing you a little glimpse of what I'm doing. So it started very innocently in a bar to 20 guys. We took the back room in a bar, and then it went to hotels, and then it became 2 study clubs because we would never make the study club bigger. We wanted to keep it small, and we did 7 sessions a year, and then there were 2 sessions, and I had 3 study clubs going simultaneously. Then people found out in LA and wanted to know if they could come. We had people coming down from San Francisco. Finally, your mother said, why don't you just make an international study club? So it started just like that. And just to end it all, we did that for 37 years. We didn't quit because of lack of busyness. The day your mom sent out letters to everybody that was on the books that was yet to come to Santa Barbara, she wanted a return receipt so they didn't just show up.
Because those study clubs evolved into the Santa Barbara seminars.
That's right.
Okay.
And so, basically, we were 2 years booked ahead when we stopped the study clubs. It took on different forms. I went to Arizona and did the Scottsdale Center for Dentistry for 2 years. That was a continuation, but in a $60 million facility. Came back to Santa Barbara, as you perfectly know. We did Santa Barbara seminars out of the hotel because we went from our office to a hotel because the office was 10 at a time. The hotel, we did 15 at a time. So it helped a little bit on the margins because what people don't know that are watching this, there's enormous cost expenses behind the scenes. So sometimes your last 2 doctors are your margin. So we always, though, wanted high level. It wasn't numbers. We could have had big numbers, but it wasn't about the numbers. It was about the performance and transferring knowledge and making people better. So that was a little glimpse of how the study club started.
It's interesting. I think we should point out to our audience the difference in technology at that time, because I remember when I was a kid walking in and you were sitting at your slide library with the drawers pulled out, and I could see all of your slides, all of your cases, and you would just be sitting there looking at them. And I remember asking you like what you were doing, and you said you would look at a slide and you would kind of think in your head what you were going to say about that slide. I just always remember that, watching you work when you
Yeah, I guess I'll play off of you. This isn't part of the interview per se, but by reviewing one's work in the quiet of your own time, you can reflect on what you didn't do, what you could have done, what was missing, that if you integrated that, it could have gone from an okay case to a fabulous case. So I learned a lot by looking at my work when the patients are gone, the staff's gone, and just, over a glass of wine or whatever. Maybe we had a beer, I don't know.
That's interesting. Okay, the next question I have for you is, what was endodontics like entering the mid to late 1980s?
Well, there has been a big evolution in endodontics. So let's just say forever, we had files, reamers, we had headstroms, we had Gatesglins, and that was about it. Rubber dam clamps, forceps, etc. But endodontics was pretty much the same old forever. Then in the 80s, the early 80s, Apotheker, a general dentist, first wrote a paper and described the use of a dental microscope. And there was no pictures, there was really no, it was 2 pages. I read that and was very, very intrigued. Then I ran into Noah Shivian at the AAE meeting, I believe in '86, and he had a booth. And I said, what are you doing in a booth? You're an endodontist. He said, I'm selling the Shays Virginia microscope. You need one, Cliff, you're teaching. So, I thought I should, he had a flower, and I looked down on the pedal and I could see things that were amazing. So I thought this would really help me chairside on the isolated tooth under a rubber dam. So I got the first microscope on the West Coast, started getting some slides, wasn't very comfortable. My ass was always about that far off the chair because there was no ergonomics, but I knew I could never go back. So through a series of microscopes, got a Global, had it for 10 years, got a Zeiss and had it from 2000 to the present, last 19 years. So the microscope was a huge part of the practice, and it changed everything about how we practice endo. Right on that, the heels of the microscope introduction, there was the MTA, mineral trioxide aggregate, out of Loma Linda, Mahmoud Torbenejad. And that was the first time we had a repair material that was biocompatible. Sharpie's fibers could grow into the cementum, 400 microns or so, and so we could get a biological attachment with a repair material, which was unheard of. And then a little bit after that, ultrasonics was born. Gary Carr gets the credit because he introduced them as surgical tools, whereas I was primarily introducing ideas non-surgical, like trephine around a broken instrument, vibrating MTA like mud, like concrete, around root curvatures into root defects. So we had the microscope, we could see a lot of stuff. So then we had a great material, MTA. Then we had ultrasonics, and that allowed us to do so much with removal of post, broken instruments. And then finally, you know, I guess the whole thing closed that 10-year period with the rotary instruments, NITI. Early 90s, 92, 93, we saw our first rotary files. Those 4 changes were game changers, and they forever changed how we practiced endodontics.
So a lot of technological advancements at the end of the 80s.
Technology drove it all.
Okay, well, 1995 was a very pivotal year for you. What happened in 1995?
Well, that year, if I didn't have bad luck, I'd have no luck. My mom passed away. You had a health issue. That we will talk about at another time, but you're healthy and perfect. Look, this is not perfect. It says perfect. All right. So black belt, perfect. Okay. So anyway, there was a lot of things. My mom died. You had a health problem, and I was lecturing in Italy. I was doing a 3-day congress to about 600 people. In the middle day, my eyes started flashing, and I thought it was a bad contact. Long story short, I had a torn detached retina, didn't know it, decided to do the 3rd day not to let the colleagues down. Message, when you have a health problem, it trumps everything, take care of it. So I did not take care of it and gave the 3rd day, then it takes a day to get home. Long story short, I ended up through a series of referrals to an ophthalmology surgeon, and he said, Cliff, you just about ready to go blind. Your macula will be off in another half hour to an hour, and then you are dead in the water with eyesight. So he said, you're going to need a sclera buckle. We're going to need to do a procedure, put a band around your eye, and then we'll have support, and then we can lase your retina back to your eye, and you'll probably be fine. So that was a big deal. I was out of practice for a year, but through those adversities, that's what I want the audience to hear. Everyone made me a better person. Everyone opened up possibilities I never had seen, from her to my mom to my eye. That's when I started inventing. During that year, I needed to keep the staff together because they were my family, so we decided to work on things to make dentistry better. And of course, I was still teaching my 2-day seminars.
Well, that leads us right into the next question, which is you have over 15 patents and have invented, I think, 13 or 14 dental products that are sold every day internationally. So I was going to ask how you got started inventing. Well, you kind of just answered that, but did you want to talk any more about that?
You know, dentists think because they have a DMD behind their name or a DDS that the doctor, and there's this reverence, you know, this halo appears over their head. But what we don't realize when we're doctors, there's many things we can do besides just serving patients. We can teach, we can educate, we can invent, we can go back to academics, and we can give back to students. So I think that we should look at our adversities in our life as stepping stones and opportunities, and inventions aren't good or bad, they just are, but we're all doing something chairside, and when you're chairside, you're using a tool or a piece of armamentarium or some diagnostic technology, and it really helps the profession. So if you have an indication or an inclination to do things like that, take action.
So maybe the adversity in your life actually sparked some creativity and thinking in a different way so that you were able to sort of change the path of your life a little bit.
My butt would still be tacked down to a dental chair, and I'd still be 24/7 four-waller. And so now I get the best of all worlds. I get to publish a little bit, get to invent a little bit, get to see a few patients a little bit, and all that's still in endodontics, but it keeps you fresh.
Well, you've actually published countless articles over a few decades and are known to be a very good writer, a very clear writer. So have you always been a good writer? What kind of got you into writing?
I've just been phenomenal. I mean, my writing has been impeccable. No, I write like probably doctors write records, right? You can hardly read it, and there's just enough information, but it's all there for legal liability reasons. But I had 2 daughters, and for about 10 years, a lot of my papers were massaged and contributed to by your sister. Then when we snatched you out of Berkeley, Cal Berkeley, the University of California, Cal Berkeley, You came in and you were a literature major. And I could just sit down, the audience should know, I can just sit down and she almost like interviews me like this. She's taking notes, and all of a sudden we have the makings of a paper. And a few rounds later, it begins to evolve, it begins to get exciting, then we get clean copies, now we get creative, and you're helping me move stuff around. But it's really been fun working with you, and I would say you're looking at the writer.
We should clarify that my degree was in French literature, but still, I'm still able to help him.
The papers will now be in French.
Do you remember the title of your first article and where it was published?
There was one or two earlier, but the one I can recall is my good friend Barry Vilken. This is back in 1985, I believe, or 86, and I wrote Treatment Considerations of the MB Root of Maxillary First Molars. I might have switched a few words around, but it was emphasizing maxillary first molars, MB root, and the second canal, the MB2 or the MB3.
Okay, I don't remember, I don't know if do we have that article in the office? Because I actually might want to read it.
I actually have it at home in Barry Vilken's. He did these little quarterly. They were like winter, spring, summer, fall. So it was a booklet that came out 4 times. It was a beautiful booklet. It had maybe 5 or 6 articles in each one by different people. And at that time, it was visual, like you'd never seen before. And it was much more than pre and post-op x-rays in that era. There was photographs. That was kind of unusual. Barry did a great job. I just saw him recently at Terry Pancook's during a live demo. Great to see Barry. Yeah, Barry.
So the last question I want to ask you before we take the interview outside is, can you briefly describe your endodontic philosophy?
Well, I guess first of all, there's a patient. So anything we have philosophically in our heads and our hearts and our minds and through our hands, it should be addressed to taking care of people. So I think I exist, we all exist, even in your level of life, whatever you're doing, we all exist to help others. So in dentistry, it's pretty obvious. People come in with a toothache, and so you want to help make sick people well. So that'd be number one. And then relentlessly work on your performance. Performance can always be improved, and that's fun. Never get stale. Challenge yourself. Challenge yourself. You know, people don't realize this, but we wake up in a big industry, and every day you go to work, and you're one of 1 million international dentists that trudge in to do your daily job. You join a big machine. It's huge. It's over $6-7 billion a year, and it's easy to get caught up in being a little cog in a big machine and like finding where's the relevancy. So I think to stay relevant, we need to do little things like count something. It should be something that is fun, like mid-mesials or MB2s or radix paramolaris, radix paramolaris. Count something, something that you're interested in. Write something, something little, something that 3 people read, 5 people, but you begin to connect. And it's that connectivity where you go outside yourself where the real learning can happen.
Okay, so pretty much to keep learning and keep staying relevant.
Yeah, never stop your education. And I think we've said it before, but we can say it again. Education should be inspiring, and by talking to others, like just talking to you, I learn a lot every day. You don't even think I do. You think it's I'm pulling your chain. The Italians say, "You push my leg." But you know what? You learn from everybody. I learned from Isaac, my grandson, the shooter. He's always telling me something he's discovered, some space thing he's creating for the next Star Wars stuff. It's fun to talk to people and find out what they're doing. It keeps you engaged. And a lot of times, I see stuff in other endeavors that I can bring right back into endo.
Okay, well, thanks. I think we'll continue with our interview outside.
I was afraid of that. Thanks.
Okay, that was some pretty intense interviewing inside there, so I needed a little bit of fresh air. So here we are outside, enjoying the nice day and the nice view. But I wanted to ask you the next question. How has endodontics evolved in recent years, and what do you see the future of it being?
Well, there's probably several futures I can imagine. I know you can, but one of the futures that would be best is if we focused on education and really taught our residents, certainly our dental students, the value of fundamentals. Because a lot of times there's the young kids, they want to do everything with technology, which is fabulous, but technology must be seen as an adjunct to fundamental skills. So the future could involve new technologies that are relevant, and then it could involve serious education with a hands-on component, and then always training, endlessly training, because most of life is in the plateau, and we spend years in the plateau learning and practicing what we did from another era. But every now and then you learn something, and when there's growth, you can jump up a little bit and create a new higher plateau. So we should be loving the plateau, because that's where most of our education and our skills are going to be refined and honed.
So I'm also hearing you say, though, that even in the future, there still needs to be an emphasis on the fundamentals.
Absolutely.
I hear you saying that all the time.
Yeah, because I guess I haven't said this yet, but over 90% of my practice for 15 years of my longer career, it was like creeping 50%, 75, but 90% was retreatment. So a lot of my life has been spent redoing other people's endodontics, and I can tell you, from all those thousands and thousands of failures, it's almost always failure to follow fundamentals.
So you've been in endodontics a long time, like several decades, and you've practiced for many years. Then you invented, and you get out and teach. But what would you say inspires you daily? Where do you get your inspiration from?
Family. For me, it all starts with family. So when you and I are good, when Philly and I are good, when my camera guy, the Isaac, the shooter, when he's good, when Lori's good, when the grandkids are playing well on their tennis, they're getting their strokes back, I'm really excited, and I know everything's going to fall into place. So get a lot of inspiration from family. I get a lot of inspiration from not the travel, but the people I meet on the other side of the plane trip. And through that travel, you meet really interesting people from all walks of life, and you see how they approach their work, what they're thinking, what they think are limitations, what they have as breakthroughs that maybe we haven't seen over here. So I'd say family and fellow dentists.
Community.
Sports.
Yeah. Sports is always inspiring for sure.
Yeah, because winning, losing, playing together, common goals, working hard.
Okay, I guess for the last thing I want to ask you is about this thing called A Path with Heart. So you and Mom went on some retreat a while ago. I guess it was in 2003.
Yeah.
And you had an experience that you call A Path with Heart. Can you tell us what that was about? Because I think it's a very inspiring story to end this interview with.
Oh, well, that was Phyllis and I had completely different visions of the trip. I had my vision, she had hers, but it wasn't the same vision. But it was a guy named Mark B. Cooper, NBC, and I did a little bit of coursework with him over the years in different areas of my life that needed like heavy lifting. But we went up to the San Juan Islands out of Seattle, and it was a week-long course, so we took a little puddle hopper from SeaTac in the international airport out to Orcas Island. And Orcas Island is fabulous. It's one of the first places from the west coast where you can see all the volcanic peaks, Rainier, Baker, Hood, all that. And that was the setting. The island has deep inlets because there's islands everywhere, Friday Harbor, Lopez, Shaw. And we went to Orcas, and on Orcas Island, we met in the meeting. There was about 20 of us, the way I recall, and he just got up in front of the group and said, what you're going to do, this is going to be the week. You're going to meet here every day for 5 minutes, then you're going to go outside, find a really spiritual place of enlightenment, and you're going to sit down and you're going to write your life story. And not just up to where you are, but all the way what you can't even see to the end. So he had us write down all these things. Well, for the first few days, I didn't write anything. I was like skipping rocks, and there was orca whales coming through the channel. It was fabulous, and there blowholes and water spewing up. It was a thing of beauty. Phyllis kept saying every day, you got to write, and I'm going, come on. But anyway, because at the end of the week we were supposed to read our obituary. So all this writing, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, was about getting to writing our obituary and presenting our obituary to the class. So finally on Thursday, I started writing like crazy. Oh, I wrote like you would. I was prolific. It was just pouring out of me like a vessel. I dumped it all. And then we had to read our obituary. And so when we did that assignment, he said, well, very good. He said, you know how it all happened up to now. You know what you wrote on your tombstone, your obituary. So he said, now that you have it all mapped out, best wishes, have a good life, see you at the next course. Well, that was profound for me because at that time in my life, when you think about what you want on your stone or whatever it is you're
like
earned.
How you want to be remembered.
Yeah. Well, then if you actually jot those things down and have, like here lies a man that did 37,000 root canals. Well, for me, that'd be like bullshit. Here lies somebody that was honest, did good work, helped a lot of people. So having that idea planted so clearly in my head that then you can live every day with a map. You have a roadmap to get to the future.
So now maybe it will say Ruddle, creator of the Ruddle Show.
Well, NBC was pretty good at giving that course Path of the Heart, and Mark B. Cooper's helped a lot of dentists around the world. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Dad. That was a great interview.
Thanks.
I feel actually honored that I get to interview you, so thanks.
Okay, so we'd like to close our show today with some quick questions for Cliff Ruddle. And if you could just answer these in 1 or 2 words, that'd be great. And I'll just keep them coming at you quickly. Okay?
Do I have to worry?
Favorite color?
Blue.
Favorite sport?
Baseball and basketball.
Favorite Yogi Berra quote?
Oh, when you get to the Y in the road, take it.
A food you absolutely refuse to eat?
Slimy spinach.
The last book you read?
Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell.
Most intriguing dental invention in the last couple years that isn't your own?
Well, a little more than 2 years would be CBCT for me.
Okay. Do you have a favorite dental instrument or bird that is your go-to?
Well, if we're in the world of Shape Clean Pack, it'd be ProTaper SX.
Do you watch Game of Thrones?
Not really.
And I haven't watched it either, so hopefully there will be no questions in the future about Game of Thrones. Favorite movie of all time?
Stand With Me.
Stand By Me?
Oh, Stand By Me, yes. And Private Ryan and Titanic and Rocky. Yeah, I have a few.
Michael Jordan or LeBron James?
Oh, that's easy. Michael Jordan.
Rolling Stones or the Beatles?
Beatles.
Best thing about practicing?
Helping people.
Worst thing about practicing?
Paperwork.
Favorite international city you have visited?
Vancouver.
If you didn't live in Santa Barbara, where would you want to live?
Santa Barbara.
Nike or Adidas?
Nike.
Your mentor?
Al Krakow.
3 all-time favorite athletes?
Oh, baseball, Mickey Mantle. Football would be Ken the Snake Stabler. And basketball, Magic Johnson. Showtime.
Favorite pastime when you are not working?
Anything outdoors.
Is there some place you have never been where you would like to travel to?
Yeah, I'd like to do a walking tour of the Alps.
Is there something
Swiss.
Is there something you would like to do that you've never done before?
A walking tour of the Alps. Dolomites.
Okay, in less than 5 words, the future of endo.
I have to pause on that one because I see several futures, but the preferred future is knowledge, training, and performance, and get them all up.
Favorite daughter?
Oh, Lisa, Lori, both.
Okay, so that's our show for today. See you next time on The Ruddle Show.